regardless of your chosen tipple, whether you're a raider, a G-poser, an expert roulette on loop enjoyer, or a psychopath, there is one thing in Final Fantasy XIV that is unanimously the bane of your existence: losing a roll. We've all been there, at the worst of times and at the very worst of times. When you roll 20 or below on the last Savage drop you need for best in slot, and you know for a fact that no matter how nicely you ask, the other 7 guys are not going to pass for you, and that they're going to be competing for your beloved leg upgrade, whilst you sit there in the cuck chair knowing you don't have a chance in hell. It's a dog-eat-dog world after all. Even worse, though, is when the Square Enix gods deign to give you hope. When, instead of rolling low, you actually roll very high. A 97 is actually happening. It's going to be real, at long last. You finally have a chance. There's only 2 numbers higher than yours. What are the chances? They can get one of them. Almost non-existent. It's in the bag. You're going to be rolling up to Limsa in some brand new trousers. Yet when the final party member clicks need, and you see the chat box spew out the list of each player's roll numbers, there's something missing. There's no victory jingle of a drop, no pop-up, only the sad realization as your eyes hover across those numbers in the chat box one by one. 67, 25, 43, 97, that's you. And there it is, highlighted, a 98. Congratulations to the summoner, the guy who died to practically every mechanic, the utterly deserving recipient of your ever-so-desired loot. We've all been there. It's even worse in Dawntrail. This time around, the Extreme Trial mount rewards are by far the best yet. Instead of a horse, or a dog, or a weird mini-dragon, we instead get wings of various stylings inspired by their original encounters. Each and every one is dripping cool, and brings back something that I feel has been missing from the extreme reward pool for many, many years. A non-item level reward that people actually want because it looks good and they'll use it, rather than just to tick an arbitrary progress box. Previously, the Valley Garmander ones were my favourite because I have a bit of a penchant for the colour red, and whilst they are solidly the most basic in comparison to both the Zeralja and Queen Eternal mounts, they landed on the right spot on the colour wheel. In patch 7.2, though, Zelenia and the Extreme Trial variant released, and this one had my eye even more on account of it being both red and having a sword on the back, which for all intents and purposes is like double red. As a result, I had to have it. The issue is, of course, that I first need to see the mount and then win the roll. According to this Reddit post, which, let's be real, even if the evidence is made up and based solely on vibes, might as well be the video game equivalent of a peer-reviewed research paper, it says the drop rate of the mount is roughly 1 in 20, 5%. Then, once you manage to scrounge a mount drop out of one of her metal orifices in the first place, you need to roll against the other 7 players and beat them. Because the mount isn't purchasable yet either, there's no pity system. There are 3 ways you can go about this. Firstly, you can just get lucky and win fair and square, the boring way. Secondly, and this one requires quite a bit of planning but is by far the most consistent option, should you prepare the right buffs, of course. You wait until the mount drops, and then you yank out the Ethernet cables of the 7 other members of the party for the next 10 minutes so that you're rolling against yourself. Inevitably, in a battle of you versus you, I would hope that you will be the winner, and you'll be long gone before the other 7 get online again to complain. To pull this off, you need to find their home addresses, visit each one individually, or have your agents help you out, cut the wires at the right time. It's a whole mess. And if you're able to pull it off, more power to you, but I'm not. As such, in pursuit of my wings, I've worked hard to scientifically crack the code to rolling high, and in this video, I'll show you the fruit of my labour. It turns out, the answer is just simple: self-flagellation. It has worked successfully 3 times in a row. The Wings of Ruin fell into my inventory on clear number 48. Not the best, but you know, new beginnings are shaky and all that. The Wings of Resolve came next, and that one took 35 clears to get. And then thirdly came my crowning glory, the Wings of Eternity, at just 15 clears. Now, I intend to do it again. The Wings of the Knighthood will be mine. Zelenia as an encounter is what I like to refer to as Rubicante if it was fun. They're both puzzle-centric fights where the majority of the difficulty comes from solving these few, isolated, complex moments of friction that crop up, but none of those instances have any particularly challenging execution requirement. Traditionally, this makes them very fun to initially progress and learn, and painfully dull to farm on repeat. Zelenia's better though, because it includes just enough in the way of a more reactionary, execution-based challenge through her various occurrences of Escalon's Fall to keep you occupied. And the puzzles themselves have you at least moving around the arena a little bit, as opposed to literally being rooted in place like in Rubicante. The battle opens with, in a shocking twist, a raid-wide damage. You drop some puddles, do some ins and outs, and occasionally some shake it all abouts, and destroy some ads that seem to be there for the sole purpose of padding out the fight duration to a healthy Square Enix mandated period. After that, though, you must deal with the main challenge Zelenia has to offer, her 5 big blooms.
5 big balls.
With each bloom, the arena changes to this lovely red flowery pattern look, with the mechanical twist that whenever an instance of damage hits one of those rose panels, damage will pulse across it and all those linked to it. The first bloom is really just as a showcase of that interaction, as Zelenia pulses these conal AoEs around the arena, with the party needing to dip and dive to find a path and follow in between them. The second bloom is much the same, with the added foil of either a donut or circular AoE to limit your space and require you to dodge to the side to avoid the pulses of the staggered AoEs and blooms. The third bloom comes almost immediately after. Actually, that's the worst part about Zelenia. Bloody everything is just called bloom, so it all gets jumbled in your memory until the telegraph begins appearing. Every time I pull the boss and get to a mechanic, I'm like, what's that? Oh yeah, that's the follow-y one. Or that's the in then out one, because the names mean absolutely nothing to me. When this third bloom comes, I call it the towery one. In the shock of the century, it's because there are towers this time around that need to be soaked, and they're added as an additional foil. Players are marked as well with flower icons, and they'll drop additional bloom panels in their wake. Connecting 2 towers together equals bad, but soaking towers individually, like a respectable citizen, equals good. After 3 blooms in a row, we get a nice little break in the form of the second mechanic in the fight, but with a twist. The old yoinkin twist is at it again, this time with the reoccurrence of the in-out, followed by the shake it all about. But now you'll have to safely drop donuts at the start, potentially adjusting to who gets to in and out first, and who must wait for the traffic circle to pass to do their job. There's 2 strats that Party Finder likes to use for this. The amorphous raid plan, in which the true difficulty is in trying to find which raid plan they're even alluding to in the first place, and hoping it hasn't been stealth updated since you last checked it. The second one is the one in which you spread out the donuts and zoom in really fast, Sonic style, which inevitably leads to half the party forgetting where they're supposed to go in the first place, and everybody going boom more often than not. I have no idea why, actually. Maybe it's hypnotism. I found the first option to be a little more consistent, so when I got the choice, I preferred raid plan parties. This is somewhat of a tangent, but good lord, I miss macros. Instantly accessible in the party chat, making them easier to access for console gamers, displaying up-to-date positions for important mechanics, and cutting out all the fluff, of which there is a lot once you've already cleared the encounter. Once a fight is fully understood, there's often only a few core points where there's any ambiguity on where you should be going, and macros are the fastest, most universal way to convey that information for those users. Raid plans and guides both have a time and place, and they also serve a purpose to the community, but macros serve that purpose of going in, posting, and pulling with less confusion and less wasted time. Rest in peace, honestly. We didn't deserve you. I hope you resurrect someday. Although, on second thought, maybe it's best they stay dead, because nowadays, every 4th line, you'll get the equivalent of a watermark to make sure there's no stealing allowed. Macro created by Jovial Merriment. Spread like this. Macro created by Jovial Merriment. This is your stack spot. By the way, did you know the macro was created by Jovial Merriment? Bloom 4 is where the fight gets interesting, from a solution aspect at least. There's 4 flower guys that will drop puddles, and 4 guys who, well, don't do that. Doing this correctly spreads the flowery floor across one half of the room, and shortly after you're marked with tethers, and 1 player gets a stack. Because you're breaking these tethers, you can't all stack up, so it does a lot of damage. This was the real lightbulb moment of Zelenia for me, because it was a really cool utilization of a simple concept. Everything on the rose panels gets spread across the rest of them, right? That includes the stack. So after you split the chains up, you move onto the rows and proliferate the stack damage to the group on the other end of the arena. I think that was my favourite moment from blind proccing the fight, actually. Bloom 5 is the mechanic in which you just run forehead. It, combined with the donut into circle attack, or vice versa, which you've seen before, with bloom panel hazards as well as chakrams dashing from the edges of the battlefield, and you simply just need to dodge it all. This is a lot easier than it sounds, and it ends up being a bit of a step down from the previous bloom, rather than a continuous ascension in how interesting they are to solve. Then you're done, right? Well, not quite. I said there were 5 big blooms, but honestly, I lied. There's a 6th. It's just that unless you're in a minimum item level or a participant in a truly cursed run, you're almost certainly going to skip it with a high level of consistency. It's a shame, too, because it's by far the most interesting and highest level of challenge that Zelenia has to offer. This is where all the lessons you've learned come together. Both the towers and connecting rose tiles to create pathways that then allow you to spread the focal points of mechanics elsewhere. The boss does these huge cleaves, leaving tiny safe spots, and you need to connect pathways to the towers to allow you to soak them whilst hiding away from the cleaves on other parts of the room. It's really interesting. At least it would be if you didn't always either skip it or tank LB and ignore it. If you do at least a decent chunk of those correctly, the boss will fall and you get +1 totem. 99 times and you can get the mount on Pity in 5 million years time. Or you can just win. My plan was simple: queue in, clear, get the drop, win. If I somehow lose, which definitely will not happen, I increase my good karma and therefore my luck through community service. Then we go again until it works. Easy. I started my clears on healer, the role I'm most comfortable with. None in particular, just whatever I could get into the constantly dwindling number of parties with. I had handily managed to get the Astrologian weapon I needed for prog on my very first clear, and as a result had slacked on doing any farming before Savage, so I had basically nothing. This meant that I wanted to prioritise White Mage, Sage and Scholar, so that if their weapons dropped I could roll Need instead of Greed and get a guaranteed win. Why are we here if not to be a loot goblin after all? The first thing I learned is that when you don't have minimum item level sync checked to boost the challenge like I did in my first clear, Zelenia doesn't hit hard at all. Avoiding vulnerability stacks were more of a suggestion than a hardline rule, because even with them it was just fine. Multi-hit stack damages look scary, but utilising 2-minute defensives were usually enough to negate the need to even try and heal in between attacks, even if the mitigation usage from others was spotty. Most of the blooms, interestingly, only really did any damage when you entered a failure state, so I was able to hold onto my mitigation and stack it for those few instances of raid-wide damage, and rely heavily on regens and free heals to passively top the raid afterwards, rather than needing to invest any real effort to keep the party alive. You know, you get those fights where you really notice if your co-healer is slacking, where you're working overtime to keep the group alive and it feels like you aren't getting an ounce of help in doing so. Well, Zelenia is not one of those fights. You literally don't need that other guy. The second thing I learned or rather was reminded of, was how much more effort Scholar is compared to every other healer in the current landscape of Final Fantasy XIV. Not that it's a bad thing, but let me explain what I mean. Thanks to that second lightspeed stack they received, Astro has endless movement available near enough every time they need to deal with a mechanic. You only use one lightspeed for your 2-minute window, and the other one is just free. And in a farm party with relative consistency, you have Swiftcast too. So much movement at your fingertips that traversing the battlefield is zero effort at all. Sage has their Adder Sting stacks and their off-buff Phlegma to facilitate easy movement, and White Mage can use their Lilies, having little issue doubling up for both healing value and movement. Scholar only has its dot refresh, and all the other healers have that too. And if they want to use Ruin too, you're making the decision to sacrifice damage to do so. It's a failure state. It's odd that in the ever-simplifying market of FF14 jobs, where mobility is gifted and simplicity is key, Scholar has remained less mobile than its counterparts. Do I mind? Really? No, honestly. It's just funny to see that in a landscape where casters are increasingly becoming more agile, and Astro had all their friction trimmed away, just this expansion, Scholar remains the same, warts and all. Regardless, the clears kept coming in. I passed the 10 totem mark without event, nor more than 1 or 2 wipes. It was consistent, and for that, I was thankful. I picked up weapons too, for Sage and White Mage, as well as some rogue ninja daggers and a Black Mage rod. As totem number 13 dropped into my inventory though, there was something extra in the loot pool. 3 items. There it was, the first mount. We got on it nice and quickly too. I braced myself, did a little chant for good luck, and hit need.
Chat, what do we reckon? No! What did I roll? I rolled a 19! Community service!
But it didn't go my way. A 19. Utterly awful. There was no chance that 7 other people would collectively be unable to muster up a 20. My luck wasn't good enough, clearly. And there was only one answer. Community service. I figured 3 would be enough. I hadn't done Party Finder in Cruiserweight at the time at all, so I took a quick look at the strats and hopped into a Sugar Riot clear party. I was expecting the ads phase to be the #1 problem, and it was. We wiped there a handful of times before seeing even a hint of progress, but I was shocked to learn that it wasn't the main problem.
Well, there it is.
So once you break through ads the first time with a party, there was this tendency to consistently continue to make it through on subsequent attempts. After that, though, it was every player for themselves without fail. The spreads would go wrong, or if it were fire stacks, one of the melee would inevitably greed and hit the mud on a less than ideal pattern. If you made it through that, then when the thundercloud spawns, you have a second weather report to worry about. That's because there's a good chance for precipitation leading to slippery floors, which without careful attention can and will result in a crash. Regardless of what happens, at least a few players will get their feet wet and expect healers to dry off that painful dot whilst dealing with everything else as well. And yet still, this isn't the main white point. It's the bloody towers. Somehow this is a major wall to Party Finder. Speaking of walls, it's like they're magnetic. A rogue DPS always seem to find their way into one at the most opportune moment. Because of this, after almost 4 hours across a couple of different parties...
Oh my god, they got back in that? Holy. This percentage is like terrible though, it's an enrage for sure. Ow!
We were unable to eke out a single win. So for a bit of a palate cleanser, I joined a Dancing Green instead. This one was much quicker. Nice and fast, in and out, community service clear, #1 complete. From there I called it a night, letting my luck marinate, and decided to continue the next day. With the dawn of a new day, I still needed to help out with 2 more clears to finish maxing out my definitely not imaginary and 100% real luck meter, so I jumped into the first party finder that wasn't adamant about 2 chests and just wanted to get their weekly book at any cost.
Excuse me, brother! That spot, you criminal! I was just like, wait, where am I supposed to go now? I fucking res him and he just walks into my spotlight and I'm just stood there next to it like, wait, that's mine! What do I do with this? That's mine! Give it back!
Dance like there's no tomorrow!
What's going on here, guys?
Let's finish with style!
Gamers! Excuse me!
Whilst clears in Savage the previous day had been like trying to get blood out of a stone, today groups were on form.
Whatever you want me to be, Mirror-Boreas.
This is probably still an enrage angle.
Let's do it again sometime!
0.2. It took 5 hours to get a clear yesterday, whereas here we got 2 in just over an hour. I could go back into Recollection Extreme and try my luck again. This time, though, I wanted a bit of a break from healing, so I decided to try something new. Until now, I hadn't gotten a single chance to play much Black Mage in Dawntrail, and none whatsoever since the more recent rework took place. The rework, whilst it didn't remove any actions or change your available kit, shifted the way you prioritize your skills on Black Mage extensively. Timers have been removed, rendering that fire paradox for damage and movement rather than needing to fulfill the additional use of refreshing astral fire. This meant that if there weren't any mechanical constraints preventing it, you could fairly easily just stand still and blast out all 6 of your Fire 4s in a row without any instants or needing to refresh astral fire in the current patch. Thundercloud would just sit there too, and you would refresh it in much the same way a healer would only think about dot timer and nothing else. A lot of the stress from Endwalker Black Mage was gone, replaced by another job entirely that wore its skin, yet was utterly unable to mimic its speech patterns convincingly. A Skinwalker. I expected to hate it, honestly, because I really enjoyed Endwalker Black Mage. But I didn't. It was fun. A different kind of fun entirely, but extremely fun nonetheless. I was quickly informed that generally, with the current iteration, you want to use Transpose whenever you can to shift into and out of Astral Fire. When shifting into Umbral Ice from Fire, best practice is to use an instant such as Despair or Xenoglossy, then weave Transpose and either a Swift Cast or Triple Cast, so that then you can instantly cast Blizzard 3. Each cycle you're able to do that, you'll gain damage. When shifting from Ice back into Astral Fire, you ideally want to keep your Fire Starter proc from the previous cycle handy. You'll use an instant in Ice like Paradox or High Thunder, then transpose back into Fire and use that Fire Starter proc to instantly hit Astral Fire free. If you don't have a Fire Starter for whatever reason, like you won't directly after your opener as one example, you can Paradox and then use the Fire Starter generated to replicate the exact same effect without any damage loss. Trying my hardest to get these better cycle transitions instead of the worst option of manually casting them became my mission during these runs. Sometimes it went great, and others I messed up. But I felt like I was building essential muscle memory in both cases. I did a run on Red Mage and Summoner as well at one point, but they didn't really keep my attention like Black Mage was able to in that moment. The clears rolled in. There was one party that struggled a bit, but the rest were consistent and fast, smooth sailing. I passed the 20 clear mark, and then the 25. At 28, it happened again. The wings were part of the loot pool, yet again. If we were going by the 5% drop rate rule from the start of the video, which of course was made via Feelycraft, we were way ahead of average pace to get 2 sets of wings in under 30 pulls. Now, I just needed to win.
Oh god, chat. We either get the wings, or we go in the mines. 88, 88, 88. That's decent. That's okay. That's alright. Not bad. Let's go! We're free from the mines! Okay, so how many clears do I have? Mirror. Does it help if I have 20? David, does it help if they tell you I've cleared this fight only 28 times? I'm so sorry, Mirror. Mirror, I'm so sorry. Mirror, come back. Mirror, I'm so sorry. Well, our wing collection is once more complete. 4 out of 4. Let's go. I think this is the expansion I've had the best luck for primal mounts ever.
Well, that was fast. With a roll of 88, the drop was mine in just 28 clears. I stayed for a couple of extra runs so that I could convince myself that I hadn't just committed absolute daylight robbery before I dipped to go and admire my prize. If a sample size of 4, and only 4, wasn't enough to prove the unanimous scientific accuracy of the community service for luck method, I don't know what is. There's definitely no way you could more thoroughly test this. It works, and if it doesn't, you must have done it wrong. I suppose now I enter Extreme Trial Hibernation until patch 7.3 releases, but when it does, I will be there with my tried and tested method, ready to yoink your mount with my luck-enhanced rolls. Thank you so much for watching this video if you made it all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. I have a Patreon. You don't need to support it, but if you do, it allows me to keep uploading here more regularly. The people on screen now are the reason I was able to make this one, and I'm so greatly appreciative. I'll add pre-release excerpts for future videos there, as well as some exclusive content,